Since May the 1st, we've lost 42 councillors for a variety of reasons. The Tories have lost 180, and Labour have lost over 200. 3 for very, very serious sexual grooming, sexual molestation and rape of under 16s. You haven't heard a single one of those reported on the BBC, or I've read in your newspaper column, or anywhere else.
The mainstream media has hit a new low. In this video, you will see a Times radio host try to shame Nigel Farage with rumours from when he was 13 years old. But wait until you see how Nigel responds. He doesn't just deny it, he exposes the sick hypocrisy of a media class that obsesses over his school days while covering up the fact that Labour councillors are being arrested for grooming and child rape right now. This is the two-tier media exposed. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the like and subscribe button and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Let's watch this together and I'll give you my thoughts at the end.
Yeah, that may be right.
I think that's probably fair. Look, Nigel, as we discussed at the beginning, you'd obviously like to be asking more questions in Parliament. You'd ultimately like to be answering the questions in Parliament because you'd like to be Prime Minister. What sort of questions do you think you might have been asked recently? Had you been Prime Minister?
Oh, God.
Last couple of months.
They'd asked me about allegations from when I was 13. They'd have asked me about...
13 to 18?
No, I deny that, totally.
Really?
Yeah, totally. And some of the things that were said were complete fantasy land. I mean, just ridiculous stuff I have no recognition of at all. Was there aggressive banter? Was there winding up of left-wing teachers? Did all that stuff go on? Was the world a different place? Yes, but some of what was said was ridiculous. I'd have been asked about that clearly in PMQs, but, that stuff doesn't go very far. I mean, what people want to know is where do you stand today on something, and what do you intend to do tomorrow?
I want to ask you about that stuff, because that stuff is important, and I don't think I could have you sitting in the studio without asking you about it. The allegations were that you hissed gas noises at Jewish pupils, that you told black pupils to go back to Africa. Are these directly allegations that you deny?
Completely untrue. The go back to Africa was made by a kid who was 10 in the last year that I was there, who I'd never even met.
You didn't hiss the gas noises, because this is not just. Quite a few people have said this.
No. Well, of course they have. Once in the if you're leader of the Lib Dem group in the West Country, or a former leader of Conservative Council that lost your seat last year because of reform, once one person says something, you've got safety in numbers to say what you like. I deny it.
I mean, I'm Jewish. People didn't speak to me like that at school. If they had done, I'd hope they wouldn't have done so twice. There's also been criticism from the Jewish community that, aside from denying it, you also don't necessarily seem to have taken it all that seriously.
Well, don't take lies seriously. No, I never have.
You're just saying. I mean, your position is just purely and simply lies.
On the Jewish community, if you want to talk about that, I generally don't try and segment. But if you look at my political career, I've had the most enormous support from prominent members of a Jewish community in this country.
Right. Okay.
All the way through my career.
Yep.
Including now.
Sure, understood. But I mean, I think there are still people who would like some reassurance. Where you're saying, I mean, if you're just saying this didn't happen, you're not saying.
How long have I been in public life? 30 years.
Sure.
30 years. I've been leader of political parties for best part 20.
Yep.
I have been recorded. I have been scrutinised, probably more than anybody on the current political scene. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you've had anybody who's known me over the course of the last 30 years that I have worked with that would ever say anything like this.
That's not the allegation, though.
I also don't believe that anything any other party leader said nearly half a century ago would come under this level of scrutiny.
Well, I mean, but you can either deny it or you can say it doesn't matter because it was so long ago. The point is, though, that these aren't going to go away if and when you are Prime Minister.
They will go away.
Why will they go away?
Because they're not true, they can't be proved, and we've got more important things to talk about than what people might have done age 13.
Patrick, what do you think? Do you think they're going to go away?
Look, I think that there are clearly people out there who are uncomfortable about reform's rise in British politics, and for whom reform represents that kind of politics, regardless of the accuracy of the allegations either way. So, look, there will always be people who want those things to be true about reform.
That's
UK.
for sure. Yeah.
So those are, I think, it's going to be a rolling accusation. I think whether it has any material impact on the polls is another question. I personally, looking at the data don't necessarily think it has. And I think the strategic question for reform now, obviously looking over the next year, is consolidate it 30%. How do you get to 35%? How do you get to 40%? Yeah. And, I guess the jury is out on whether stories like this and how Nigel responds to them are making that easier or harder. What do you think, Nigel?
No, that's a fair point. I mean, I think, we kind of have...
P. Bill Esterton.
I was very pleased to hear that the government's latest announcement about the rollout of the chickenpox vaccine. This, of course, is in stark contrast to the vaccine conspiracy.
No, have we lost that?
I think he was going to say something about vaccine conspiracies.
What do you think he was going to say, Nigel? Before we lost that?
Because we had one of Robert Kennedy's, the American health boss, because we had one of his advisors, senior advisors actually, speak at our conference, a Brit actually, Asim Malhotra, expressing very, very sceptical views about the COVID vaccine, that somehow we're part of some grand conspiracy. Not true. Not true. All my kids have been vaccinated. I believe in vaccinations when they're vaccinations. I don't think what happened with COVID were vaccinations, because you have to keep having them every 6 months. So that's a very different debate. But what is interesting is there were 2 Kent MPs who got to ask 6 questions between them in 2 months. And 5 of those 6 questions were about reform-led Kent County Council. And the whole thing's becoming a complete charade. Yes, you were right earlier to say that governments often do get favourite backbenchers to ask questions. By the way, Bill Esterton, another regular.
Sure, for sure.
You're down to about 5 Labour MPs who actually get the chance, over the course of the last year, who get the chance to ask a backbench question.
Let's hear the PM's answer to the question, which was, as you suggest, precisely like that.
Of course.
Pleased about the measures we're able to announce this week. Of course, that comes on top of the 5 million extra appointments that we've delivered in the first year of a Labour government, and 300,000 taken off the waiting list, and more to come as we turn the year into 2026. But he's absolutely right. They laugh at the denial of the importance of vaccines. Imagine where this country would be if they ever saw power. And if you want an example, all they'd be like, look at the local councils where they won power. They're absolutely chaotic, in a mess, and putting taxes up.
Yeah, it's just the usual setup, knockdown, nonsense. And we get no chance, any of us, to even respond to any of it. And it's sad to say, that for reform, Parliament is becoming an even harder place to be.
Before I let you go, Nigel, you've been riding high in the polls, dipped a little bit. Do you have that concern that some people are expressing that this might have been as good as it gets?
We're up this week. Every single poll this week's had us up.
And I was going to ask Nigel, in 2026, I mean, listening to the Prime Minister talk, and Bill Esterton there talk about Malhotra at conference, the antics of some of your councillors and candidates, is there not a case that actually part of the problem with reform is that sometimes you make it a little bit too easy, not you personally, or sometimes you personally, for the Prime Minister to come back and say, actually, I know there might be a small part of your mind that is questioning whether you really want to vote for reform, and here is the evidence that they are cranks, racists, lunatics, that sort of thing.
You're going to need to find, 400, 600 candidates?
Since May the 1st, we've lost 42 councillors for a variety of reasons. The Tories have lost 180, and Labour have lost over 200. 3 for very, very serious sexual grooming, sexual molestation and rape of under 16s. You haven't heard a single one of those reported on the BBC, or I've read in your newspaper column, or anywhere else. So what you've actually got now here is a debate taking place with Parliament at the middle of it that is not a debate of equals. Of course I'm going to have wrong-uns. You're in any walk of life. If we put up 5,000 candidates, although the messages I'm getting now are that the council elections could be much bigger than we thought they would be, just since this programme began. But if it's treated fairly, fine. We will be held every single day between now and the next election to a different standard to everybody else. I know that. I know it's going to be tough, but I also know there's a growing number of people in Britain who genuinely think Britain is broken and needs a fresh approach, and that's what we're going to try and provide.
Did you hear that silence in the studio? The host wants to talk about 1977. Nigel Farage wants to talk about child safety in 2025, and the media refuses to report it. This video sums up exactly why the establishment is terrified of Reform UK. They try to smear him with old lies. He ignores them and speaks up for the working class and our pubs. He exposes the crimes they are trying to hide. Farage is right. Labour has lost hundreds of councillors, some for the most heinous crimes imaginable, and it's a footnote. But if Nigel Farage sneezed wrong 40 years ago, it's front page news. Let me know in the comments. Is the media deliberately covering up for Labour while smearing Farage? And do you agree with Nigel that the nanny state is killing our pubs? If you want to see more videos like this, hit the like and subscribe button, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.